Welcome back guys. After discussing about the skeletal muscle physiology, now in this video we will be discussing about the neuromuscular junction and also we will be discussing about the motor units. Now, I will start this topic from the basics, okay. Even though you have already studied about the upper motor neurons and lower motor neurons in the topic of central nervous system, again I am going to start from the basics, okay. First, let's begin from the brain. Guys, let's say here is your cortex, okay. These are the two cerebral hemispheres, let's say these are the parietal lobes, okay. And here I am showing you these are the temporal lobes, okay. Now, down to the brain, we know we have the brainstem. The brainstem which consists of the midbrain, okay, here is the midbrain, pons and medulla, okay, the midbrain, pons and medulla. We know through the foramen magnum, the medulla is going to continue as spinal cord, okay. So, here I am showing you the cross section of the, here I am showing you the spinal cord, and let me draw the cross section of the spinal cord also, okay. So, this line which I am showing, it is going to divide the spinal cord into two halves, right side and left side. See, these are the dorsal columns. Right now I am drawing the anterior horns of the spinal cord and the posterior horns, okay, the dorsal horns and the anterior horns. We know about that. Guys, now let me draw the motor neurons. See, whenever someone is trying to come and touch you, okay, whenever someone comes and touches you, or whenever you feel something, or whenever you want to do some work, okay. So, it is the cortex which has to give the information to the spinal cord first, okay. First the cortex, okay, when you want to do something, when you want to do some activity, you want to take some bottle, you want to fight with someone, you need the muscle contractions, right. So, to perform a response, to perform an action, you need to have the contraction of the muscles. So, how that is going to happen? It all starts with the cortex, okay. The activity is starting in the cortex with the help of this neuron that I am showing in the red color. See, this neuron is beginning from the motor cortex. You know where exactly the motor cortex is located? The motor cortex is located in the precentral gyrus. Okay, from the precentral gyrus, this motor neuron is beginning. The name of this motor neuron is called as a bed cell. Okay, these are called as a bed cells. And from where these motor neurons are beginning? From the layer number 5. Layer number 5 of the neocortex. And don't forget, this is always the right side of the body and here it is the left side of the body. Now, from here, see this motor neuron, it is descending down. Okay, this red color neuron is a motor neuron which is descending down into the midbrain, pons and medulla. In the lower medulla, okay, in the lower medulla, what exactly happens? See, these motor neurons are going to cross to the opposite side. Okay, the motor neurons are going to cross to the opposite side. Most of the motor neurons will do that. Okay, 80% of these motor neurons are going to cross to the opposite side. Okay. Now, this crossing is called as a pyramidal decussation, okay, pyramidal decussation. Now, after crossing this motor neuron, look carefully where exactly is this going. The motor neuron is entering into the spinal cord, okay, the motor neuron enters into the spinal cord. The two into which column of the spinal cord? The motor neuron is entering into the lateral column of the spinal cord. Lateral, these are the lateral columns, so this is called as a lateral column of the spinal cord and we are going to call it as a lateral corticospinal tract, okay. Why we are going to call it as a lateral? Because it is entering into the lateral column of the spinal cord. So, it is called as a lateral corticospinal, means from the cortex to the spinal cord, lateral corticospinal tract. Okay, sir. Students, please tell me, is it an ascending tract or descending tract? The motor neurons are coming down into the spinal cord. So, these are the descending tracts. Okay, this lateral corticospinal tract is a descending tract. Okay. Now, my question is, where exactly is this motor neuron going? See, the motor neuron, it is entering, okay, this particular motor neuron, it is entering into the anterior horn, okay. It is entering where? It is entering into the anterior horn, are the ventral horns of the spinal cord. We know these are the ventral horns of the spinal cord and these are the dorsal horns of the spinal cord. You tell me where exactly this motor neuron is coming, the red color neuron, the motor neuron is coming into the anterior horns of the spinal cord. So, that's why we say anterior horns are motor in nature, okay, because the motor neurons are coming here. Okay, sir, okay. Now, what this red color motor neuron is doing? It is going to control the activity of one more motor neuron which is coming out. Okay. Now, my question is, what exactly is this pink color motor neuron? Okay, the neuron that I have highlighted right now in the blue color. See, this is also a motor neuron. Where exactly is this motor neuron going? See, this motor neuron is directly going to innervate the skeletal muscle. It is going to innervate what? It is going to innervate the skeletal muscle. Now, my question to you, sir, how many motor neurons are there? See, from this diagram you can say there is an upper motor neuron which I am showing in the red color, and there is a lower motor neuron. Okay. So, you tell me guys, if someone asks you upper motor neurons are beginning from where? The upper motor neurons are beginning from the cortex, and the lower motor neurons are beginning from the spinal cord. And that too from which horn of the spinal cord? It is the anterior horns of the spinal cord. So, you tell me, if the anterior horn is damaged today, because of some reason, if the anterior horn is damaged, it is the lower motor neuron which will be affected. Okay, it's the lower motor neuron which will be affected. You tell me, whenever the lower motor neuron is affected, do you think your skeletal muscle can it contract? No, the skeletal muscle is not going to contract because the lower motor neuron is dead. Tell me which motor neurons are in direct communication with the skeletal muscles? It's the lower motor neurons which are into direct contact with the skeletal muscle. Okay. So, there are two types of motor neurons, upper motor neurons and lower motor neurons. Now, my question to you. Okay, first let's discuss about the neuromuscular junction. Okay, neuromuscular junction. What exactly is happening in the neuromuscular junction? Guys, let me draw the skeletal muscle here. For your easy understanding, okay, I am showing the skeletal muscle in the green color here. So, here is the skeletal muscle, let's say. Now, what exactly is happening in this neuromuscular junction? Okay, this neuron, now it's the responsibility of this neuron is to contract this muscle. So, how exactly is that going to happen? Okay, now let me make it more wider so that it will be clear for you. Okay, now here I am showing you the axon terminal. Let's say this is the nerve terminal. Okay, here is the nerve terminal. Nerve terminal, we know it contains, okay, the nerve terminal, it contains the vesicles which contains the neurotransmitter. Here, okay, there is a vesicle which contains the neurotransmitter. Okay, it contains the neurotransmitter. The neurotransmitter which is present in these vesicles is the acetylcholine. There are thousands of vesicles which contains the acetylcholine. Now, today this neuron is getting depolarized. See, the neuron is getting depolarized. Means the action potential is traveling along the axon, and the action potential, now tell me where exactly is it reaching? The action potential is reaching the nerve terminal. Today the action potential is reaching the nerve terminal. So, what will happen whenever this depolarization or whenever the action potential is reaching the nerve terminal? Because of this depolarization in nerve terminal, the voltage gated calcium channels are going to open. Okay. So, here I am showing you the voltage gated calcium channel. So, now for the first time this voltage gated calcium channel opened. Now, who is going to come inside? Now, it is the calcium, it is the extracellular calcium which is present outside. Now, it is the extracellular calcium which is going to come in. Okay. Now, where this extracellular calcium is going to bind? The extracellular calcium is going to go and bind with the vesicles which contains the neurotransmitter. Okay, the vesicles which contains the neurotransmitter. Now, what will happen? Guys, let me tell you a few more important points which you should know for the exam. Guys, see this vesicle, okay, vesicle, it is having a protein. Okay, which I haven't shown here. Now I am showing. See, on this vesicle, there is one more protein which I am showing here in the blue color. What is the name of this protein? The name of this protein is called as, okay, let me write here, synaptobrevin. Synaptobrevin. Okay, it is called as the synaptobrevin. It's a type of snare protein. Okay, snare protein. Synaptobrevin. Now, on the presynaptic membrane, see this is called as a presynaptic membrane. Now, on the presynaptic membrane, there is one more protein. Okay, there is one more protein present like this. Okay, what is the name of this protein which I am showing here? The name of this protein which I am showing here, this is called as syntaxin. Okay, synaptobrevin and syntaxin. So, now what should happen? Let me tell you what should happen. Guys, whenever the calcium is coming into the cell, whenever the calcium is coming into the nerve terminal, the calcium is going to go and bind with the vesicles which contains the acetylcholine. Now, this vesicle is actually going to move. The vesicle is actually going to move so that the synaptobrevin, this synaptobrevin is going to come and dock with, going to come and interlock with syntaxin. Okay. So what exactly is going to happen? Let me tell you. So this synaptobrevin, see, it's actually going to come. Okay. This synaptobrevin, it's actually going to come and fit here with the syntaxin like this. Okay, like this. So that docking is must ensured. Okay, that interlocking is must ensured for the exocytosis of the neurotransmitter. Okay, whenever the synaptobrevin is going to come and bind with the syntaxin, also some other proteins are there like SNAP25. Whenever the synaptobrevin and syntaxin they are going to fuse, that is going to be responsible for the exocytosis of the neurotransmitter. So finally at the end of the day, the acetylcholine molecules, okay, the acetylcholine molecules are going to release here in this space. Okay, so this is the acetylcholine is released. Okay, there is exocytosis of acetylcholine. Now, what is this space called as? This space is called as the neuromuscular junction. Okay, neuromuscular junction. The space is called as the neuromuscular junction. Now, what this acetylcholine is going to do now? Okay, what this acetylcholine will do? See, this acetylcholine, it will come and bind with its receptor. Okay, so here on the muscle, there is a receptor for the acetylcholine. Okay, actually, the acetylcholine receptors are present on the individual myocytes. Here I am directly showing the muscle, but actually in reality, these receptors are present on individual myocytes of the muscle fibers. But okay, now what happens, tell me? This acetylcholine is going to come and bind with the, okay, the acetylcholine is going to come and bind with the acetylcholine receptor. What is the name of this acetylcholine receptor? The name of the acetylcholine receptor is called as NM receptor. NM stands for the nicotic receptor on the muscle. Okay, N stands for the nicotic type of receptor which are present on the neuromuscular junction. Now, whenever the acetylcholine is going to bind with this NM type of receptor, this receptor is actually an ion channel. It's an inotropic receptor. It's an ion channel. Whenever acetylcholine is available, this ion channel is going to open. Actually, it's a sodium channel. So, whatever the sodium which is present outside, okay, now I am talking about the sodium. Whatever the sodium which is present outside in the extracellular fluid, now sodium will go into the cell because sodium is always high outside the cell. Okay, sodium concentration is always high outside the cell. So, sodium is going to go from high concentration to the low concentration. Now, sodium is going into the muscle. Now, who came into the muscle? Sodium came into the muscle. And you tell me sodium is a positive charge. So, because of the entry of the positive charges, the muscle is going to undergo depolarization. Okay, and you know, whenever any cell which undergoes a depolarization, it is activated. Now, here it is a muscle cell. Whenever a muscle cell is depolarized, what's going to happen, guys? Whenever a muscle cell is depolarized, the muscle cell is going to undergo contraction. Okay, so muscle cell is going to undergo contraction. Okay, so this is how the muscles are going to contract. So this area, okay, is the neuromuscular junction. And what exactly is happening in the neuromuscular junction? See, there is going to be release of the neurotransmitter from the presynaptic membrane. And whenever the neurotransmitter is going to bind with the, NM receptor, the nicotic receptors, actually the nicotic receptors are the ion channels which are going to open the sodium, sodium channels. So sodium goes into the muscle, that's going to cause a depolarization of the myocyte, and depolarization is going to cause a muscle contraction. Okay, how exactly muscle is going to contract? What is the electromechanical coupling and the cross bridge cycling, that was already discussed in the muscle physiology. Okay, skeletal muscle physiology. Here I have just explained only about the neuromuscular junction events. Now let's try to integrate with some clinical conditions. Okay, now let's integrate with the clinical conditions. The first clinical condition that I am going to discuss with you is a condition called as a botulism. Okay, botulism. So what exactly is happening in this botulism? Okay, what exactly is happening in the botulism? See, this botulism is because of a bacteria called as a Clostridium botulinum. Okay, Clostridium botulinum. So where exactly you are going to have this Clostridium botulinum? The Clostridium botulinum is present in the canned foods. Okay, it's present in the canned foods or contaminated meat or milk products, sporulated honey. Okay, contaminated honey. So whenever you are going to consume such contaminated food products, okay, you are going to get Clostridium botulinum into your body. Okay, now this Clostridium botulinum, what it will do in your body? The Clostridium botulinum, what it is going to do in your body? it's going to produce a toxin called as botulin. Okay, it's going to produce something called as a botulin. Now you tell me what this botulin is going to do. Botulin, it's going to be uptaken into the neurons. Okay, botulin directly goes into the neurons. This toxin, it directly goes into the neurons. So what this botulin toxin is going to do? Now whenever this botulin toxin, when it enters into the neurons, it is going to cause the damage to the snare proteins. So today, because of this botulin, the snare proteins are damaged. That is, there is breakdown of synaptobrevin, syntaxin, SNAP25. The snare proteins are damaged. So you tell me, whenever the snare proteins are damaged, okay, whenever the snare proteins are damaged, do you think the acetylcholine will be ever released? No, there is no release of the neurotransmitter from the presynaptic membrane. From the presynaptic membrane, acetylcholine is not going to be released. Now you tell me, without acetylcholine, do you think the muscles will contract? No, muscles are not going to contract. So this baby or this person is going to go into paralysis. So in a person who is having botulism, what is the problem? The problem is, okay, so there is a defect. Okay, there is a defect in release of neurotransmitter. There is a defect in the release of neurotransmitter from, okay, presynaptic membrane. Okay, there is a defect in the release of neurotransmitters from the presynaptic membrane. Okay, now you tell me what will happen. So there is no release of acetylcholine. So muscles are not going to contract. So the patient is going to have a flaccid paralysis. Okay, that too we use the word descending. Flaccid paralysis. Okay, descending flaccid paralysis. Okay, now this is condition number 1. Next, let me explain you about one more condition where the neuromuscular junction will be affected. Okay, guys, now I am going to discuss about a autoimmune disorder. Right now I am discussing about an autoimmune disorder where antibodies are produced. Okay, antibodies are produced against this structure. Okay, you tell me what is the structure that I have highlighted. The structure is called as a voltage gated calcium channel. So now let me write here antibodies against, okay, voltage gated calcium channel. Now today tell me what will happen when the antibodies are attacking this voltage gated calcium channel. Do you think, I am asking you, do you think the calcium, can it go into the nerve terminal easily? No, definitely not. The calcium cannot go into the nerve terminal easily. Okay, so you tell me what will happen when the calcium is unable to go into the nerve terminal easily. Okay, do you think acetylcholine is released? No, again the neurotransmission. Okay, the release of the neurotransmitter will be affected. So what is the name of this condition? This name of this condition is called as a Lambert. Okay, Eaton syndrome. Okay, Lambert-Eaton syndrome. So tell me what exactly is happening in the Lambert-Eaton syndrome. In Lambert-Eaton syndrome, it's an autoimmune disease where the antibodies are produced against the voltage gated calcium channel. So no calcium, without calcium, no exocytosis, without exocytosis, the contraction of the muscle is not going to happen. Okay, now let me explain you about one more autoimmune disorder where the target protein or the target structure is the nicotinic N receptors. Okay, now the antibodies are produced against the acetylcholine receptors or the NM receptors. So antibodies against NM receptor. So again it's the same story, Now the antibodies are blocking here. Acetylcholine cannot come and open the cyanotropic receptor. The acetylcholine cannot cause the depolarization of the muscles. So the muscle is not going to contract. So the patient is going to have the masthenias. Okay, the patient is going to have the muscle weakness. He cannot contract the muscles. It is very hard for him to contract the muscles because the acetylcholine is not able to go and bind with. Okay, the acetylcholine is not able to go and bind with the NM receptors. Okay, so now what is the name of this disease? The name of this disease is called as a myasthenia gravis. Okay, myasthenia gravis. So what is the problem? See, in myasthenia gravis, the problem is on the postsynaptic membrane. You can say here. Okay, on the muscle. In Lambert-Eaton syndrome, the problem is in the neuron. Okay, the problem is on the nerve terminal. Okay, that's the difference. So in both the condition, either it is a Lambert-Eaton syndrome or either it is a myasthenia gravis, the main problem. Okay, the main problem is going to be the muscle weakness. The muscles are not contracting properly. There is muscle weakness. Here I will use some keywords. Okay, let me use some keywords so that it will be easy for you. Okay, to diagnose the condition. How to differentially diagnose the Lambert-Eaton syndrome from the myasthenia gravis. is, see, if you are suffering with the Lambert-Eaton syndrome, let's say, okay, you are the one who is suffering with the Lambert-Eaton syndrome, definitely you are going to have the muscle weakness, okay, and even in the myasthenia gravis also, definitely the person is going to have the muscle weakness. How it is going to be different in between these two conditions, okay, how it is different in these two conditions? Let me tell you, in Lambert-Eaton syndrome, okay, the person initially he is going to have the muscle weakness, but whenever he tries to do work, whenever he is trying to perform the work, okay, for example, he is trying to lift the weights, initially it is hard for him, okay, initially it is hard for him to lift the weights, but progressively whenever he is working, progressively the muscle weakness will decrease and the movements and the action will become better, okay. So there is going to be progressive betterment, okay, progressive betterment, okay. But in myasthenia gravis, gravis means what? Gravis means the severe weakness. Grave means, you know what exactly is a grave? It's a so severe muscle weakness, okay. In myasthenia gravis, there is going to be progressive weakening, okay, progressive weakening. What does I mean by the word progressive weakening? Progressive weakening means in the morning, let's say in the morning it's okay, okay, it's okay, the muscles are like, you know, contracting, everything is fine, but with the time, okay, by afternoon, by evening, the muscles are going to become so weak you cannot able to contract the muscles, okay. That is the difference between the Lambert-Eaton syndrome from the myasthenia gravis. In one place there is a progressive betterment, in the other condition there is a progressive weakening of the muscles, okay. Now you tell me how to treat these conditions, okay, how to treat these conditions. In both the conditions the problem is the muscle is not contracting, and we know what is the neurotransmitter that is needed for the muscle contraction, it's the acetylcholine. So we have to increase the acetylcholine levels here. The moment you increase the acetylcholine here, this acetylcholine, high levels of acetylcholine, when you keep here high levels of acetylcholine, that acetylcholine can actually remove the antibodies, okay. In myasthenia gravis, I have told you, in myasthenia gravis what actually happens is the autoantibodies, they will compete with the acetylcholine to bind with this site, okay. So the autoantibodies are competing with the acetylcholine. So what you have to do? You have to increase the acetylcholine levels. Whenever you increase the acetylcholine levels, okay, now acetylcholine can come and bind here, so that is leading to the depolarization of the muscle and contraction of the muscle. So how can we increase the acetylcholine levels here? Let me tell you, okay. See, there is an enzyme called as acetylcholine esterase, okay. So I am talking about here, see, let me tell you, see, here is the lower motor neuron, from here acetylcholine is going to release, okay, here is the muscle, okay, this is the muscle. Acetylcholine, say, once it is released, it is going to go and bind with what? It is going to go and bind with the receptor. We already know that. But do you think whatever the acetylcholine that is released, do you think it will be there forever? No, it shouldn't be like that, okay. Whatever the acetylcholine that is released into this neuromuscular junction, that should be degraded, okay, that should be degraded. So who will degrade that? That is acetylcholine esterase, okay. So there are enzyme called as acetylcholine esterases, they are going to degrade the acetylcholine. So now what we have to do, how to treat this myasthenia gravis? You have to inhibit this acetylcholine esterases. The moment you inhibit this enzyme acetylcholine esterase, the longevity, the half-life of this acetylcholine is going to be more, the acetylcholine is going to be available for a long time. So that is going to remove the antibodies from their blocking position that can lead to the muscle contraction. So the drugs are called as physostigmine, okay, physostigmine, neostigmine, okay. So what are these drugs? Physostigmine, neostigmine, okay. What are these drugs? These are acetylcholine esterase inhibitors. Now whenever the acetylcholine esterase is inhibited, acetylcholine is going to be available and that's going to treat the problem, okay. Now, so with this successfully what we have completed? We have completed the three important conditions. One is the botulism, Lambert-Eaton syndrome, myasthenia gravis, and also we have, okay, discussed about the clinical, the pharmacological integration of physostigmine and neostigmine, how they are going to be helpful in the treatment of the myasthenia gravis, okay. Now here itself I am asking you, imagine there is a virus, okay, there is a virus. This virus is coming and infesting, okay, it is replicating in the anterior horns of the spinal cord. Okay, this virus, where is it replicating? This virus is replicating in the anterior horns of the spinal cord. Okay, so it came here for the honeymoon. Now you tell me the anterior horns of the spinal cord is affected, gone. Today anterior horn of the spinal cord is gone. So tell me, is it the upper motor neuron which is affected or the lower motor neuron which is affected? It's the lower motor neuron which is affected, and that's going to cause again paralysis of the muscles. So what is this virus? The virus which is living in the anterior horns of the spinal cord, the virus which causes the damage to the anterior horns of the spinal cord. So the virus is poliovirus. Poliovirus. So poliovirus, what it will do? It causes damage to anterior horns of spinal cord. Okay, so these are the clinical things which I want you to teach at the area of the neuromuscular junction. So after discussing about the neuromuscular junction, now let's move on to the topic of the motor unit. Okay, so what exactly is the concept of the motor unit? Okay, first let me tell you the definition of motor unit. Definition, look at here. Definition is the number of muscle fibers. Okay, the number of muscle fibers, or you can say the myocytes, innervated by a single motor neuron. I have shown you what exactly is a motor neuron, upper motor neuron, lower motor neuron. Now I have talked about the lower motor neuron. I have told you the lower motor neuron, it will come and innervate the muscle fibers. How many muscle fibers are getting innervated? For example, look at here. This is your muscle. You know, inside the muscle there are fascicles are there. Inside the fascicle there are myocytes are there. See, these are the individual myocytes, right? These are the individual myocytes. Now, look at this motor neuron. For example, this motor neuron. The motor neuron, it is coming and it is innervating how many muscle fibers? 2 muscle fibers, let's say. Okay. So now this is one motor unit. Okay. So what is one motor unit means? Motor unit means one motor neuron is innervating how many muscle fibers? Okay, it can innervate 2, it can innervate 1, or it can innervate 200 also. Okay, how many muscle fibers are getting innervated? That's called as a motor unit. For example, you look at here, this red color motor neuron, it is coming like this. Okay, it is innervating, see, 3 muscle fibers. So this is a different motor unit, So here you can say this is a nerve, this is the spinal nerve. For example, okay, this is the spinal nerve. See, inside this nerve there are multiple motor neurons. There are hundreds of motor neurons. These motor neurons, don't think all the muscle fibers are innervated by the one motor neuron. No, in the skeletal muscles there are hundreds of muscle fibers, and these muscle fibers are innervated by multiple motor neurons. Okay, so now look at this, guys. Now the motor units can be of 2 types. There can be a small motor unit or there can be a large motor unit. For example, look at here. What is a small motor unit means? The small motor unit means one motor neuron. See, one motor neuron is innervating how many muscle fibers? One motor neuron innervating 3 muscle fibers. Okay, this is the small motor units. Okay, see, I have told you one motor neuron innervating 3 muscle fibers. Now, where you see such small motor units, wherever we need fine movements, okay, not a gross movement, wherever we need a fine movement, there we require only small motor units. For example, like eye movements, the extraocular muscles, okay, they are examples of the small motor units. One neuron is innervating less number of muscle fibers. Okay, extraocular muscles and the hand muscles. Okay, hand muscles, see, the hand muscles are going to perform, okay, they are going to perform very fine advanced movements. Okay, the interosseous muscles, the lumbrical muscles, the thenar muscles, see, for these movements, okay, so we require a very fine motor units are the smaller motor units, not the larger ones. And where we see a large motor units in our body, the large motor unit meaning one motor neuron, it's a one motor neuron innervating 600 to 2000 muscle fibers, means a large group of muscle fibers are going to contract at a time, a large force is generated. Okay, so what are the examples? The soleus muscle, gastrocnemius muscle, back muscles which are going to maintain the posture. So these muscles which are very big muscles, they are all examples of the large motor units. Okay, so now for the generation of less force. For fine movements, you need to have the small motor units. For the generation of large force, large amount of force, you need to have a larger motor units. Now, having said that, now let me explain you how these motor units are recruited. Okay, how these motor units are recruited. See, now I am having a task. Now my task is to go and grab this pencil and lift it up. Okay, now this is my task. You tell me, is it a big task or very simple task? It's a very simple task. Okay, so do I need a large motor unit for this? No. So what I am trying to say, when you want to do a simple job, when your task is very simple, okay, so first in the beginning, the smaller motor units will be recruited. Again guys, listen, in a single muscle, there are thousands of motor units, small motor units, large motor units, intermediate motor units, something like that. When you want to perform a simple task, all the muscle fibers need not to be activated. Okay, when you want to perform a simple task, what will happen? Your upper motor neurons, okay, will activate. The upper motor neuron will activate first small motor unit. Okay, a small motor unit. But when you want to perform a large task, a big task, means you are going and trying to lift a 50 kg weight or a 100 kg weight. Now you need to generate more force. Okay, then the upper motor neurons are going to activate a larger motor unit. So always remember guys, always remember first which motor units are recruited. Always in the beginning, it is the smaller motor units are required. Okay, whenever you want to perform a task, for example, even lifting weights also, first when you try to hold the weight, first the small motor units are recruited, but that is not enough, the force is not enough. Later a larger motor unit will be recruited. So always remember the recruitment principle. See, who is going to be recruited in the beginning? So small motor units followed by largest motor unit. This is how the recruitment will happen. Okay, whenever your task is completed, you are going back to original position, when you want to have the relaxation, you want to drop the weights. So which motor unit need to be de-recruited? Okay, it's a larger one. We don't want the larger one now because we are decreasing the force, we are decreasing the work. The task is completed, we no longer want the muscle contraction. So while de-recruitment, it is the largest motor unit will be de-recruited, followed by large and followed by smallest. So how the de-recruitment is going to occur? De-recruitment is in the opposite direction, largest followed by large followed by small. Okay, so always remember, first thing, in a skeletal muscle, okay, there are thousands of muscle fibers present. There are different types of motor units present, a small motor unit, large motor units, different types of motor units present. Okay, when you want to perform a simple task, small motor units are recruited first. Okay, when you want to increase the force generation, a large motor units will be recruited later. Okay, later. This is called as Henneman's size principle. Okay, this is called as what? Henneman's size principle. Now, after this, anything else is going to determine the force generation by a muscle. Any other things which we need to consider, which determines the force generation by a muscle. Okay, for example, you look at here. This is one motor neuron, let's say. This is one lower motor neuron. This lower motor neuron is innervating these three muscle fibers. Okay, this is a small motor unit. And here, look at this. This is a large motor neuron. This large motor neuron, it's coming and it is innervating multiple muscle fibers. This is a large motor unit. So you tell me, the size of the motor unit, the simple the motor unit, the small the motor unit, less force will be generated. The large the motor unit, lot of force will be generated. The force generated is dependent on the motor unit, which motor units are getting activated. Okay, so look at here, the force generation. Okay, the force generation is dependent on two important things. Okay, there are other things also. The force generation is dependent on the myosin cross bridging, the number of myosin cross bridging, different things are there. But right now, I am mainly talking about the motor unit. Force generation, see, it is directly proportional to the number of motor units recruited. Okay, number of motor units recruited. More the motor units recruited, more force is generated. This is called as a multiple fiber summation. More the motor units, for example, say when I am trying to, do some work, perform some work, lift some weight, first less number of motor units are recruited. Later, more number of motor units are recruited. More the motor units recruited first, small motor unit, large motor unit, largest motor unit, more the motor units recruited, more force will be generated. That is one thing. Not only that, the force generation is also dependent on, the frequency of motor unit stimulation. Okay, this is called as frequency summation. Now students will start to have a doubt, sir, I don't understand what is this frequency summation. I understand multiple fiber summation. Multiple fiber summation means multiple motor units involved, more force generated. But what exactly is this frequency summation? Okay, frequency summation. Let me explain you. See, frequency means what? How many times you are stimulating the motor neuron? How many times you stimulate the motor neuron? More the frequency, more the stimulation, more force will be generated. That is what directly proportional means. You stimulate the motor neuron more number of times, the muscle, the same motor unit is going to generate more force now. The same motor unit is going to generate more force now. How, sir? How? Okay, let me explain you. With the help of a diagram. Now let's say here is the spinal cord. Okay, so here is a cross section of the spinal cord. You know, from the top who is going to come? The upper motor neuron is coming. Okay, this upper motor neuron, the upper motor neuron is going to control the lower motor neuron. So let's say here is a lower motor neuron. Now this lower motor neuron, where is it going? The lower motor neuron, it is going and innervating, let's say, a muscle fiber. These are the nerve terminals. So now tell me, this motor neuron, this is the one motor neuron, it is innervating how many muscle fibers? Let's say this is the muscle fiber number 1, here is the muscle fiber number 2, and here is the muscle fiber number 3. Okay, muscle fiber number 3. This is the one motor unit now. Okay, this is the one motor unit. Okay, so now look carefully. I am going to stimulate. Okay, let's say hypothetically, what am I going to do? I am going to stimulate this motor neuron. Now you tell me, whenever I stimulate this motor neuron from outside with an electrode, let's say I am stimulating this motor neuron. When I stimulate, see, the action potential is going to be generated here. Now this motor neuron is activated. Okay, so now these nerve terminals are activated. Now that's going to release the acetylcholine. Now whenever acetylcholine is released, okay, whenever the acetylcholine is released, now that acetylcholine is going to cause a depolarization of the muscle fibers and muscle is going to contract. Okay, now let me show you the same events in the form of a graph now. Okay, look at here, my dear students. Now here, this is a graph. I am taking time on x-axis and the force generated on the y-axis. Okay, force generated on the y-axis. Now see, let's say this is the 0 second. Now this is the place where I have at 0 second, let's say, okay, at 0 second I have stimulated the lower motor neuron. Now you tell me, whenever I stimulate the lower motor neuron, that's going to cause a muscle contraction. First the muscle is going to contract. Okay, now the muscle fibers are going to contract. Okay, later the muscle is going to relax. So now let's say after some time, okay, after some time, here this is a place where the motor units are contracting, or let's say the muscle, okay, the muscle is contracting. So this is how, when the muscle is contracting, the force generated is going to increase. The force, some amount of force is getting generated. Okay, and after some time, what will happen? The muscle is going to relax. Later the muscle is going to relax. Okay, muscle is going to relax. Now whatever I am showing here in the pink color, okay, whatever I have shown here in the pink color, so this is the contraction phase. Okay, this is the contraction phase, CP. Okay, and in the green color, this is the relaxation phase. Now you will be having a doubt, sir, what exactly is this graph talking about? This graph is talking about how much force is generated, by this motor unit. Now you will be having a doubt, sir, whenever I stimulate, okay, immediately muscle is not going to contract, immediately these muscles are not going to contract, they will take some time, because whenever you stimulate this motor neuron, it takes some time, it takes a few milliseconds for the action potential to travel. It takes some time for the electricity to travel on the neuron, okay, to travel to the nerve terminals. So that acetylcholine will be released, that is going to cause the muscle depolarization, later contraction. So what is this phase? This is the time period where the action potential is traveling in the neuron, leading to the release of neurotransmitter. Later contraction will happen after some time, after a few milliseconds. Okay, after a few milliseconds. So this time period which I am highlighting here, this is called as latency period. Okay, latency period. And usually how much is the latency period? 10 milliseconds. 10 milliseconds. After that, there is going to be contraction, there is going to be gradual rise in the force that is generated. So this period, okay, contraction, this is the contraction period for how much time? The contraction period, let's say it is going to be there for 40 milliseconds. Okay, 40 milliseconds. Next, what is this period that I am highlighting here? This is the relaxation period, and the relaxation period is for 50 milliseconds. 50 milliseconds. So in total, so what is this graph called as? This is called as a simple muscle twitch. Simple muscle twitch. Okay, a simple muscle twitch which includes the latency period, the contraction period, as well as the relaxation period. So you tell me, what is the time period for the simple muscle twitch? The time period 10, 40, 50, how much? It is 100 milliseconds. So simple muscle twitch is equal to 100 milliseconds. Okay, now whatever I have discussed here, okay, whatever I have discussed here, let me show you the same thing. Okay, let me show you the same thing in the graph which was already given here. Look at here, my dear students, a simple muscle twitch. A simple muscle twitch includes a latency period of 10 milliseconds, contraction period of 40 milliseconds, and relaxation period of 50 milliseconds. Okay, again I am telling you guys, this is not the action potential of a muscle. This is not depolarization, this is not repolarization. This is the contraction, this is the mechanical event, the force that is getting generated. Okay, and this is the relaxation. Okay, the time taken for the relaxation and the force is gradually decreasing. So we are talking about the mechanical activity here, not the electrical activity. I am not talking about the depolarization and repolarization. Depolarization is happening here. Okay, this is the place where the depolarization is happening. Okay, I am only talking about the how much force is generated by the muscle, and the force generation is dependent on which parameters. I will tell you, force generation I have told you, more the motor units recruited, more force will be generated. Not only that, more the time, more number of time you stimulate these motor neurons, the frequency of, the force generation is directly proportional to the frequency of motor unit stimulation. More the time you stimulate the motor unit, more force will be generated. How? That's what I am going to explain you now. Okay, that is what I will explain you now. So, look, now let me draw one more diagram. So, here you will be getting more clarity. Let's say here is the x-axis, here is the y-axis. Okay, now at 0 second, okay, at 0 millisecond, I am going to stimulate a motor neuron. So after 10 milliseconds, let's say, okay, after some time 10 milliseconds, what will happen? Contraction is going to begin. Okay, contraction is going to begin. So this is the contraction phase. Okay, contraction phase begin and more force is generated. Let's say for some amount of force is generated. After what will happen? You tell me. Sir, after the contraction phase, the relaxation phase is going to begin after 40 milliseconds. Okay, after the contraction phase, the relaxation is going to begin. Okay, relaxation begin. Now decreasing. So the force generation is decreasing. Muscle is relaxing. But now what I did, even before the complete relaxation, now again I have stimulated this motor unit. The same motor unit, again it is stimulated. Because the same motor neuron I am stimulating, so the same motor unit will be activated. So now you tell me, when the same motor unit is again stimulated even before the relaxation, do you know what exactly is going to happen? Again contraction will begin. Okay, so look carefully here. Now even more force is generated when compared to the first muscle twitch. In the subsequent muscle twitch, more force is generated. Okay, again the muscle is relaxing. Even before the complete relaxation, again I have stimulated. Okay, again I have stimulated at this point. Now what will happen? Again contraction is going to begin. Okay, now this time the same motor unit, the same muscle fibers are even generating more force, okay, again relaxing. But what we did, again we have stimulated the same motor neuron, same motor unit. Now this time look, again one more time the force generated is increased, okay, force generated is even more. Again relaxation, okay, again relaxation. Now look carefully, now after fourth time you stimulate it again, after fourth time you stimulate it again. So now look what is going to happen. The force generated is going to be constant. The force generated is going to be constant. Now there is going to be no longer further increment. There is going to be no longer, okay, further increment in the force that is generated. For 4 times, 1, 2, 3, 4. For 4 times when you stimulate, for 4 times, yes, force increase, but after 4th time, the force that is getting generated by this muscle fiber is constant. Now this is called as staircase effect, okay, and the staircase effect also called as trippy. Staircase effect, okay. The staircase effect is going to be seen for how many times? 4 times. Okay, staircase effect is going to be seen for the 4 times. Now, question is, why sir? Why? Sir, it is the same motor unit, right? It's the same motor unit. But why it is generating different forces? In the beginning, it is generating less force, but later it is generating with the subsequent stimulations, it is generating even more force, okay? How is it happening? It's the same muscle fiber. Why the force is kept on increasing? The force generation is kept on increasing. Why? Okay, that I will explain you now. Guys, look carefully here. Imagine this is your one muscle fiber. Okay, it is a one muscle fiber. You know, these are the T tubules. Okay, here are the T tubules that I am showing you. These are the T tubules. Inside there is a cytoplasm. Okay, inside there is cytoplasm. Here are the L tubules, which are nothing but the sarcoendoplasmic reticulum. Okay, sarcoendoplasmic reticulum also called as the L tubule. The structures which I am showing here, these are the cisterna, where lot of calcium is stored here. Okay, where lot of calcium is stored. Now you tell me, whenever a muscle is getting depolarized, okay, whenever a muscle is getting depolarized, what will happen? You know the DHPR channel, here there are voltage gated calcium channels. The DHPR channel is going to come and open the RYR channel. Okay, the RYR channel here in this area will be opened. Okay, now what will happen? When the RYR channel is opened, whatever the calcium that is present in this sarcoendoplasmic reticulum or this L tubule, the calcium will be released outside. And what this calcium is going to do? The calcium is going to bind with the troponin C, and the troponin C, whenever the calcium is available, the troponin C will remove the tropomyosin. So whenever the tropomyosin is removed, the active sites are exposed following the muscle contraction. We already know that. We have already discussed this in the skeletal muscle physiology. Okay, so this calcium is the key molecule which is going to control the muscle contraction, which is going to control the force generation. So now you tell me, in the beginning, whenever there is action potential, okay, whenever the stimulus is there, calcium is available, calcium is going to help in the muscle contraction. But you tell me, during relaxation phase, okay, muscle contraction completed, where do you think the calcium will go? The calcium, it will go back. The calcium, it will go back with the help of a pump called as SERCA. What is the full form of SERCA? Sarcoendoplasmic reticulum calcium ATPase. With the help of this SERCA, the calcium will go back. It will go back during the relaxation. During relaxation, the calcium will go back into the endoplasmic reticulum. That's fine. But now what we are doing? See, for the first time, see, whenever you stimulate, here you are stimulating. So whenever you stimulate a neuron, the neuron is going to cause a depolarization of the muscle. So whenever a muscle is depolarized, calcium is released. Okay, calcium is released. Calcium is going to cause a muscle contraction. But the calcium will take some time. To go back into the sarcoendoplasmic reticulum. It will take some time. But what we are doing now? Immediately, even before the complete relaxation, you have stimulated the muscle again. Okay, or the motor neuron again. So even before the calcium has gone completely back. Again when you stimulate, again calcium will come. So now more calcium is available, okay, because the entire calcium has not gone back. So now more calcium will be available because again new calcium came. The previous calcium was already there. So now more calcium means, calcium is the one responsible for the force generation. So muscle is going to contract now more powerfully, more cross bridge formation is going to occur, okay. Now in the same way, even before the complete relaxation, when you are stimulating the same motor neuron again and again, the same motor unit again and again, so what will happen? More and more calcium is available because the calcium is not going back, because you are stimulating it again and again, more and more calcium will come out, okay. So this calcium is going to be helping in the responsible for the formation of the cross bridges. More force is generated. It's the same motor unit, but more force is generated with the subsequent stimulations. So this is called as the staircase effect or the beneficial effect. The motor unit is getting beneficial because the extra calcium is available. So this is also called as incomplete tetanus. Incomplete, okay. Incomplete tetanus, okay. So I hope you have understood what exactly is incomplete tetanus and for how many times the force generation is going to increase. The force generation is going to increase for the 4 subsequent times. After that the force generation is going to be constant now. Let me explain you one more phenomena, okay. Guys, look carefully here. Now what am I doing? At 0th second, okay, at 0 second, I am stimulating a motor neuron, okay, a single motor neuron I am stimulating. After some time, okay, after this latency period, muscle is going to contract, okay. See, this is the contraction period, let's say, this is the contraction period. Now listen carefully, guys, while the contraction is happening, I am not talking about the relaxation not yet begun. Muscle is contracting, it is generating the force. Even during the contraction period, I have stimulated again, okay. So the stimulation is falling under the contraction period, okay. Whatever I am stimulating, it is falling under the contraction period. So now what will happen? Again when you stimulate, okay, again more calcium will be available. Now more force will be generated. Again more force will be generated now, okay. Now again you have stimulated, okay, even before the relaxation, again you have stimulated. Even more force will be generated, okay, even more force will be generated. Now again you stimulate, okay, even before the relaxation, again you have stimulated, okay. So what will happen? Again more force is generated, okay, again more force is generated. So after that when you stimulate, there is no further increase in the force. The force generated is going to be constant, okay. The force generation is going to be constant. So this is called as complete tetanus, okay. So what is the difference between the complete tetanus and incomplete tetanus? So what is the difference between the complete tetanus and incomplete tetanus? The difference is, see, in incomplete tetanus, even before the complete relaxation, I am stimulating, okay, I am stimulating even before the complete relaxation. But what is happening in the complete tetanus? I am not even talking about the relaxation. So I am stimulating while the motor unit is still in the contraction phase itself, okay. So there is, for the 4 times there is going to be further increase in the, for 4 times, okay, this will happen for 4 times, okay. There is going to be increase in the force. So finally this statement is fulfilled. The force generation is directly proportional to the frequency of motor unit stimulation. The more the number of times you stimulate a motor unit, more force will be generated. But for how many times? But only for 4 times, okay, not continuously, okay. That's because of the beneficial effect of the calcium, okay. More calcium is available and that is what is increasing the force of the contraction, okay. So whatever we have discussed, let me show you the same thing here. This is the simple muscle twitch where we are discussing the contraction phase and relaxation phase. Here this is the incomplete tetanus, okay. This is the incomplete tetanus. See, for 4 times the force is going to increase. After that there is no more further increase in the force. It's going to be constant. Even if you stimulate, the force is going to be constant. So this is going to be complete tetanus where you are giving the stimulus continuously, continuous stimulation is going to cause a increase in the force, initial increase in the force, but after that there is constant force generation that is happening. Okay, constant force generation that is happening. Once you stop the stimulation, again relaxation will occur. Okay, so these are the important things that I want you to know in the topic of motor unit. So in the topic of motor unit, what we have discussed about what exactly is a motor unit, the definition of the motor unit. We have discussed about the muscle twitch, okay, the simple muscle twitch, the Henneman's principle, the Henneman's recruitment and de-recruitment principle, the examples of the simple motor units and the large motor units. Also we have discussed about the force generation, the factors which are going to govern the force generation. The force generation is not only dependent on the cross bridge formation, they also depend on the type of motor units that are getting recruited. Okay, the small motor units are going to generate less force, the large motor units are going to generate more force, and the force generation is not only dependent on the type of motor unit that is getting recruited, but also dependent on how many times the frequency of the motor unit stimulation. More the times you stimulate the motor unit, more force will be generated because of the beneficial effect, also called as the staircase effect. Okay, now one very important MCQ. They will ask you in your exam, what is the tetanizing frequency? How to calculate the tetanizing frequency of any particular skeletal muscle in your body? Okay, so the formula that's very important, especially for the NICT exam, tetanizing frequency. How to calculate it? That is 1 divided by contraction period. 1 divided by contraction period. Okay, 1 stands for 1 second. Okay, 1 second. For example, okay, now I am talking about a muscle. Okay, some muscle in your body. Okay, I am talking about some muscle in your body, and I am asking you. Okay, I am telling you. This is the latency period. This is the contraction period of a particular muscle. This is the relaxation period of a particular muscle. So now in X muscle, see, for an X muscle, okay, the contraction period is 40 millisecond, let's say 40 millisecond. Okay, now you tell me how to calculate the tetanizing frequency. See, we are talking about the milliseconds, right? We are talking about the milliseconds. So 1 second is equal to 1000 millisecond. So 1 divided by 40. Okay, sorry, 1000 divided by 40. So how much it will become? 25. So 25 hertz. 25 hertz. What does I mean by? So what is the tetanizing frequency of this particular muscle? The tetanizing frequency of this particular muscle is 25 hertz, which means you have to stimulate, okay, 25 times. Okay, in a second you have to stimulate 25 times to make this muscle go into complete tetanus, complete tetanizing frequency. That is the tetanizing frequency. If you, in a 1 second, if you stimulate in 1 second, within 1 second, if you stimulate that motor unit for 25 times, okay, so the muscle will be going into complete tetanus, completely constant, okay, force generation. So that is how to calculate the tetanizing frequency, which is very important for your NICT exams and EPG exams. Okay, so with this, the topic of the neuromuscular junctions, the disorders which are related to the neuromuscular junction, and also we have seen the motor units, types of motor units, the parameters where the force generation depends on, is completed. Hope the video is helpful. Thank you.